there, you're listening to Not Another TV Podcast. This is episode 32, the week of January 12th, 2024. My name's Drew Kundig. With me as ever is my co-host, Matt Sassy. Matt, how we doing?
You know, it could have been a better week. I already hate 2024, and we're only on day 12.
Yeah, it's not up to a banner.
I mean, I'm alive. That's about all I can say.
Boy,
I'm alive.
What a standard we're setting.
And I thought 2024 was going to be like this stellar year because like 2023 ended on such a high note. Fuck you, universe.
Fuck you, universe.
Ugh. Rough seas.
To pick up of something that I meant to mention last week from our end of the year episode, I've been watching Jelly's Marble runs on YouTube.
Oh, right. I remember you talking about that.
Competitive marble racing, guys. Still just as entertaining as it ever has been. And I was immediately back in it. I'm like, fuck that marble. The marble can go to hell. Guys, marble racing is so much fun to watch. Like, there's no reason for it to be so much fun, but it is.
It is just a joy.
It really is. Like, you get favorites, you get nemesis. Like, I love it.
It's fine. We all have to have that thing that we really love, and mine is cooking competition shows. There's just something about people running around a kitchen like they don't know what the fuck they're doing, even though they're like a celebrated chef. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just hilarious to me. Like, it's very entertaining.
I did have to go back to like my old tweets. I was talking. I remembered that I was talking to somebody on Twitter about this like years ago when I was watching it. I was like, which fucking marble did I fucking hate? I can feel it. I was like, it's them. Of course it's them. Fuck them.
Well, I have not even started on my challenge to watch more animated shows. I still am only watching Adventure Time and Bob's Burgers right now. But I mentioned it today in a work meeting, and so like a couple of my coworkers were like, "Oh, I'm gonna send you a list of animes that you should watch." I'm like, "Okay, cool, thank you," because I know nothing.
Yeah, like that's the problem for you because as a medium, animation has so many good things to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there really is no shortage of like really excellent animated stuff to watch.
Yeah,
you know, especially television.
So next week on Prime Video, one of the actors I love from Broadway is going to be a voice actor on an animated show called Has Been Hotel.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'm going to watch this. So there you go. I'll watch an animated show next week on Prime called Has Been Hotel. It's about the daughter of Lucifer creating a rehabilitation hotel for demons. Sounds ridiculously crazy, but
right. Well, like that's a spin-off of another show.
It originated on YouTube a few years back. There was like a pilot that was put on YouTube, and now they're like making it a full show.
Right.
That's what my research told me anyway.
Okay. This is something I don't have any knowledge of. So
I only heard about it because the actor that I like was doing a live signing / Q&A thing, whatever, and he was talking about the show, and I'm like, "Ooh, what is this?" And so like I looked it up, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be watching animated stuff this year." It's like 2D animation, so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to really push myself. Because, I don't know, sometimes the 2D is even worse. Like, it's just hard.
Mm.
But that's just me. Anyways.
I'm gonna push on past that.
I can't really give you a word as to why I don't watch a lot of animation, or like I can't even give like a specific reason I like one animation over another, like one animated show over another, because like it's no rhyme or reason. Like I'm just like whatever.
Right.
For the most part I don't like animated. But I really liked the Superman one we watched because again, Superman. I'm obsessed with Superman,
Right.
so that was the one reason for that one, but
I love the sentiment you keep trying to bring up, which is I don't like animated stuff, except for all of the animated stuff we watch.
No, that's not true. I only sort of liked Harley Quinn, and I tolerate Bob's Burgers.
Okay.
So, and listen, Adventure Time is great because it's ridiculous. And so, like, I know it's ridiculous. So I enjoy it because of its ridiculousness.
Right.
It's whatever. Anyways, I digress. Whatever. I generally don't like animated things.
Okay.
Every once in a while, I like something animated. Yeah. I tolerate it for you, Drew.
Okay.
Oh, the shit I sit through. No, I'm kidding. I gave up on Monarch. I didn't even sit through Monarch. I just let you talk about it every week. And I'm just like, yeah, sure, I did not watch that. You could not get me. I think I watched, what was it, 2 episodes?
Yeah. No, this is like back in 2016 when I had first started watching like Steven Universe. And spent like every week of the podcast I was being like, no, seriously, you have to watch Steven Universe. You have to fucking watch this show. Like, I will be so annoying about this forever. And for the record, I was annoying about it for so long.
Wait, you were annoying about something
Fair.
That you've watched? What?
Fair. Touche.
I mean, to be fair, I'm annoying about things that I've watched too.
Touche.
So if you pay attention to my Twitter this week, like I've been annoying. So speaking of TV related news stuff this week, did you see that even though young Sheldon is ending, they're still wanting to keep up the franchise?
That is such a weird programming decision.
They're like, we're gonna cover the brother, and I'm like, why? Nobody gives a shit.
Why? Like, maybe if you want to keep Emily Osment on, because
she's kind of great.
Yeah, but beyond that, like, I don't understand that decision.
Nope, we don't understand that decision at all.
What a weird. I know this is a weird time in network television, and it's really uncertain, and CBS is kind of the arbiter of tradition. Like, they really are like the poster child for like conservativeship. So like, do what you've done.
Yep.
But
well, I mean, obviously they're doing another spin-off of NCIS.
Right. Yeah.
They're like, it works. Let's add to it. But anyways, yeah.
So speaking of news, so we have 2 pieces of news to talk about out of the specifically out of the Warner Brothers Discovery camp. I know there's a piece of news that part of that news that Mads wants to talk about, so I'm going to talk about the other one real quick.
Yes, I do want to talk about the other one.
So over the week they released the casting announcements for The Last of Us season 2, and I think in and of themselves they're good. Like, if you had done these castings outside of The Last of Us, they would be really good castings. They have given some people pause, however, familiar with the game. So joining Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal for the second season, we have Caitlin Dever, who's been cast as Abby, who is for lack of a better word, the antagonist of the second game, which is very specifically what the second season is going to be adapting. And I just think, first off, Caitlin Dever is an amazing actress who has been in a number of things and delivered excellent performances.
I love her.
Here's where they get weird. Abby in the game is designed as a very physically imposing presence.
Okay.
I hesitate to make this comparison, but physically not dissimilar from a fuck. I had it and then it just left. It was gone. From a Gina Carano type,
Okay.
Like big, kind of beefy, muscular.
Yep. I see what you're saying.
More of the butch.
Which is not Caitlin Dever.
Yeah, more of the butch variety. And Caitlin Dever, bless her heart, is a very wee person.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's like a petite little. I don't want to say. She's kind of a pixie, you know what I mean? Like, she's petite, she's tiny, she's cute, she's adorable, but yeah, I would not say she's intimidating. Person.
Yeah,
she's not intimidating. Like, I would not put intimidating on her face. Like, nope.
No.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll surprise us.
Hang on, I'm gonna send you I'm gonna send you a picture of this just so that you can understand the kind of. Just what we're working with here. It's yeah, Caitlin Dever, it goes without saying, the Caitlin Dever is amazing, but, and this honestly requires more nuance than I think the internet or social media is capable of.
Oh.
So she's kind of just kind of built, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of built.
Yeah, I mean, unless Caitlin's doing a full, building up her muscles kind of thing, trying to do that, I don't know how it's going to work.
Yeah, so this is nothing negative against Caitlin Dever at all. She'll do amazing.
Yeah, she's a phenomenal actress.
Kill it.
Right.
But there's no shortage of, butcher mask looking women that you could get for this part.
Yeah.
I without putting too fine a point on this, it is as if we gave them a butch and they gave us a twink.
Yep. Yeah, not to use those terms, but that's the best terms you can use for it, because that's basically what's happening.
Right. And another casting announcement they made was Isabella Merced was cast as Dinah, who is the romantic interest for Bella Ramsey's character.
Okay.
In the game and also for this upcoming season. And Isabella Merced, I've enjoyed her in the past in other things. The way that this is a little sticky is that Dinah in the games, and I want to note, before anyone says anything to me, I have not played these games. I'm all just working off secondhand knowledge. But Dinah in the games is Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
and her Jewishness plays into her character and her development.
Mm-hmm.
And Isabella Merced is not. Like, Isabella Merced is, a young Latina woman.
Right.
So,
which maybe they switch it up from being about Jewishness to being about, being a person of color.
right,
You know what I mean?
yes.
Maybe they take one for the other, which is not ideal, but like it's not the worst thing that's ever happened.
Right. And that's also not to say that someone who's Latina cannot also be Jewish.
Right.
That gets more into the complicated nature of, race and ethnicity and ethnostates, So it's a little bit sticky.
It definitely is.
But the funny thing to me is, and I saw someone post this online, none of the women in this upcoming season will be above 5'3". And I think that is
tiny little munchkins.
That's so funny. The other part of this is The Last of Us The Last of Us Part 2 is plot wise divisive. It is a very polarizing game. So you're already like bicycling uphill, just by adapting this story. And to already start it off with casting that are good, but aren't like definitive home runs in terms of like adaptations. Perhaps sets us off on a weird tone.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how much you know about The Last of Us Part 2.
I don't know anything about The Last of Us, so...
Well, I'm going to tell you now. This is going to cause some trouble. What happens in The Last of Us Part 2 will cause some trouble when the season comes out.
Okay.
Just because it will elicit a very strong reaction. I will say that. Without getting into exactly what happens in The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, it's a weird note to start off of. So, but I'm so moderately excited for season 2 of the show. So let's get into the other piece of news, which is also over the week. Warner Brothers Discovery via Max canceled 2 of his shows, Julia and Our Flag Means Death, for essentially not being... this was the phrases used that despite being received strongly critically and by the audience and is a technically successful show, was not popular enough.
Okay. Well, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of bullshit because, like, if it's ranking so high and both shows ended up being in the top 10 like TV shows, because Max does this thing where they're like the top 10 TV shows this week, like Our Flag and Julia were on those rankings quite frequently. So like you can't tell me that they weren't doing well enough, that they weren't streamed well enough, because also Our Flag held the highest number of streaming for the entirety of services for a long time running over the summer and like end of last year. Like, anyways, I'm not going to get too deep into it because then I'll never shut up. But I'm very, very angry, especially about our flag. Like, it's sad to lose Julia because it was a very cute and well done show. It was an interesting concept. Um, and, you know, I would have liked to have seen it do another season. I am grateful that the show ended in a somewhat, you know, tight little bow kind of way, you know, that's not like leaving some unanswered questions. But yeah, our flag just really ticks me off. And and it's not just because I love the show. Like, I do. I love the show. It means a lot to me. I have a very personal connection to it, but it's just that it means so much to a larger group of people. Um, it was centered on queer stories. It was centered on people of color. It was centered on older characters, which is something people who are looking for queer representation don't get very often. And so, like, I feel like we're losing so much by this show getting canceled. And the other thing that really pisses me off is that the creator only wanted 3 seasons. Is it really that hard, Max, for you to greenlight one more season and then call it quits and let him end the story where he wanted it to end? It's 1 season. And season 2 would have been way better if the budget hadn't been slashed and the scripts hadn't been edited to cut out things that they didn't feel comfortable having on the show. So, like, season 1, the creators and the writers had basically full creative control. And then in season 2, the executives kind of stepped in and were like, no, we're going to cut that. We're going to cut that out. And so it felt very choppy because a lot of things got cut out and the budget got slashed and they lost 2 episodes. So it was just it was like Max was trying to make it fail so that they could make that decision easier, and then it didn't fail because the viewer still watched it and still somewhat enjoyed it. And so then they were like, well, fuck, maybe we can stretch this out, and then decide to cancel at the last second, which is what they did.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Max, I have feelings. Anyways, a lot of my friends canceled their subscriptions, which is something else that happened the day after they announced. Like, a lot of people dropped their subscriptions to Max, which I find very interesting. I'm like, oh, it's as if, like, I don't know, you kind of ruined your own service. But we'll see. It seems as though the fans are putting up a fight. It seems as though some of the people in a position to make decisions at Max were not happy with this decision. So there's a chance that something might get reversed, or we might get moved to some other network, or streaming service.
Right.
We'll see.
Right. Like that was what I was going to ask, is if there was any chance of, like, going somewhere with it.
Maybe, possibly. I feel like with it only needing 1 more season, like, someone would be willing to pick it up. And it seems like it's a possibility that can happen, like, legally. David Jenkins isn't saying anything, but he's the showrunner, creator, so, like, I feel like he can't legally say anything. So we're all going off vibes at this point. Right. And the petition has reached 30,000 signatures, and actors and creators from the show have been reposting it, and it's been going all over. Like, I've not seen a campaign like this since Sense8. Like, I truly have not seen a campaign like this since Sense8. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, Warrior Nun feels like a good comparison. Because I still see people, like, even now, consistently campaigning for that.
I honestly haven't seen anything, but it could just because I have such a curated space that no one I follow watches it. We'll see where this heads and goes in the coming months, and, you know, who knows? Maybe it'll take a few years, like Sense8 did, but, you know.
Yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. Like, Warrior Nun won its little battle, but there's still a lot of people who aren't convinced that they even won.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, they're still fucking campaigning. They're still, like, working for something because they don't know what the fuck they won now.
Yeah.
It's like the weird thing with fan campaigns now. It's like, until you see it, you actually don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So anything official happens, you have no idea.
Yep.
But anyway. So let's move on into the GOAT. So the GOAT is a weekly segment we do here on the podcast where myself and Mads nominate a best TV character or episode of all time and pit them against each other on a poll on Twitter and TikTok. Last week we had our redemption round, where I brought back the X-Files Season 3, Episode 4, Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, and Mads brought back Obi-Wan Kenobi, Episode 3, Chapter 3.
Listen, I know I will be the only one dying on that hill. It's fine.
So Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose won that one and gets to move on into the annals of the GOAT. And Mads, I guess you can't nominate that again for a year? I don't know.
Whatever, it's fine.
That's what we're going
to
with
be
right
fair,
now.
To be fair, when we were looking to like find one that I like could nominate for a redemption, I had like 3 options.
Okay, you actually haven't lost that many.
Not to toot my own horn, but like I only had a couple options.
Yeah. So we're moving into a new batch of GOAT picks here. But before we get into our next GOAT, we need to settle business from last week.
Yes.
So, Mads, you won the last batch, which means that you get to force me to watch something a month from now.
So, my choice for you is Season 3 of Miracle Workers, which is titled Oregon Trail. It's like, I think it's 10 episodes.
Okay.
They're about half hour each. Not too long. But it's ridiculous and silly, and I figured you'd probably enjoy it.
I probably will. Sounds promising.
It's Daniel Radcliffe and Steve Buscemi, who have the greatest comedic duology, like, dynamic duo that I've seen in a long time, so I always try to get people to watch it.
Right, yeah. Yep, sounds good. So we'll settle that next month, or a month from now. But till then, let's start our next GOAT round. So since you lost the redemption round last week, you get to go first with your pick for the GOAT.
All right. So since around Christmas, I started rewatching Chicago Fire from the beginning because I realized I've never done like a full rewatch of the show. I've just watched it as it aired. And I was curious to be reminded of what happened in the earlier seasons. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go back and rewatch. And so I've always liked this character, but during my rewatch, I had a further appreciation for him. And that is Brian Otis Zvonecek. I cannot say his last name correctly. I probably already butchered it. It's Russian. It's fine. But he's the character that not a lot of people give a lot of credit to, but he never loses his optimism and his hope and his enthusiasm for the job and his enthusiasm for helping others and being that loyal friend to everyone in the firehouse. He just exudes what it means to be a firefighter, that selflessness. And it's honestly why his death at the beginning of season 8 was so devastating because he was just starting to really come out of the shadows, so to speak, as a firefighter in that house, because there's so many strong firefighters in one house. It's hard to really like shine, and he was starting to shine. He'd finally found a person to spend his life with, and everything was coming up Otis basically, and then he goes into a really disastrous fire and he ends up not surviving, but he does have enough time to say goodbye to his best friend and fellow firefighter. And that scene is probably one of the most heartbreaking death scenes of all time. But it's just, he's such a complicated and beautiful character that I wanted to nominate him this week. So Brian Otis Zvonecek from Chicago Fire.
Nice.
Yep.
So for my go pick, I kind of worked backwards a little bit. So I wanted to pick in honor of Echo, which we're going to talk about later on in the episode. I was thinking about portrayals of the deaf community in on television, and like some of the most prominent. And the first thing I thought of was Switch at Birth, but I haven't watched Switch at Birth, so I was like, okay, what else? And I was like,
oh, I love Switch at Birth. I'll keep that in the back of my mind for if I ever win a thing again.
But I was like, what do I think of immediately? Or like, who do I think of when I think of like a deaf person, like on television? And what I came to like almost immediately, which is what always happens, is I thought of Marley Matlin, who has played so many characters over the last 25 years and has really brought a really nice light to deaf people in the deaf community. Yep. So I did kind of work backwards from there. So this is both like Lifetime Achievement Award and also this is a great character. Because a lot of her work is like kind of quiet, but whenever she shows up, like I immediately notice her.
Yes.
But the character that I want to nominate for her today is, hang on real quick. Is her character from The West Wing, Joey Lucas. Who she played as a this very plucky pollster who just had this tremendous energy to her, and she was kind of like not subversion, but really this prominent look at a deaf character and a deaf person of like, yeah, they're not communicating with you in the way that you think they should, or the way that like feels natural to you, but she is so sharp and she is so on it, and she will make you look like a fool. Like the way that Matlin plays Joey Lucas and her 17 episodes that she's on is really just great, and she just has this presence, and there's something, and this is also just like kind of the way that Marley Matlin plays characters between like here or like the L Word or the Magicians, is she has like this extreme snarkiness, and I think that's like something so specific to like someone who is deaf, that like so much of her acting just comes from like the eyes. And when she looks at like Bradley Whitford's character, and like she's signing at him, you know, without her having to say anything, that she thinks that that she's making fun of him, and like that's just such good. Like, there's something so physical about the way that she plays any of her characters, but especially Joey Lucas, who is just infinitely on top of it.
Yep.
Even years later, when we kind of realize that polling is a little bit bullshit, politically speaking, kind of bullshit. Like, Nate Silver kind of proved that.
Mhm.
And like, to even know that and watch like her character and be like, God, that is just an endlessly smart and clever and quick person, you know.
Mhm.
And also like her chemistry, like this also goes back to like just like sheer physical performance. Like, her chemistry with Bradley Whitford is so strong. Like, it is truly amazing. Um,
Yeah.
and like, I think like a lot of the advancements like on screen, that like the greater representation that we have of the deaf community on screen through like I said, like Switch to Birth or Echo, um, really does come from Matlin's partly from Matlin's performance as Joey Lucas here, and a lot of her other body of work. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I do like really love this character, but Marlee Matlin is, in everything that she has been in, feels like a force. Uh, so that's my pick for this week.
I do highly recommend people check out Switched at Birth, and just keep in mind that it was an ABC Family show slash Freeform. I think it was still ABC Family during its run, but Marlee Matlin, yes, like her presence on that show, oh my god, like so good. Like, I just love watching her sign. Like, her signing is so beautiful, and I got to see her in Deaf West Spring Awakening on Broadway, and she kills it. There was this like talk back one time where she got up on stage and she was like, I'm gonna teach you the dirty sign language words. And I'm like, oh my god, I love you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's like, I could teach you how. She's like, meat and sex are very similar. Don't get them mixed up. She goes, because yes, you do want to meet someone, but not like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I love her. Like, she just has a personality. But good choice. Good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, her character on the West Wing, like, iconic. For as few episodes as she was on it, like, the fact that she made that big of an impact, amazing.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Like, Marlee Matlin is kind of so iconic as a TV actor that she appeared on Glee as herself.
Yes.
Like, whenever I think about like, I feel like whenever a show is like, we needed deaf characters, like, well, you get Marlee Matlin, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously.
Another show that she, like, you started talking about how you're like, she did all these like TV roles, and like the first one that popped in my head was her like 2-bit role on Law and Order SVU.
Right.
Like,
yes.
she was on like 2 episodes of Law and Order SVU, and I remember those episodes. And I'm like, that's insane, because like no other actor that has been a guest star on that show has that much of an impact on my brain, unless it's Robin Williams' episode, because his was just insane. But like, her role like could have easily been just one of a million at this point. And yet it's the first one I think of when you mention her name.
Yeah. A role that she was not that she got an Emmy nomination for.
Yeah.
She's had a few actually. That I'm looking, one for The Practice, one for Seinfeld, and one for Picket Fences.
Lady has done it all. I also remember there was an episode of, this is really weird, but there was my little sister when we were younger was obsessed with Extreme Makeover Home Edition. and there was an episode where they built a home for a deaf-blind child
Oh,
and his family, and she came in and she, like, was signing and talking to people and stuff.
nice, nice.
I mean, she came in obviously as herself. She didn't need to be a character,
Right.
but yeah. But I was just like, I think that was one of the first times I, like, thought of her as not an actress, because, like, up to that point I'd only seen her on, like, television shows.
Yeah.
So
that's the GOAT for this week. You can vote for both of these on Twitter and TikTok, and you'll have 2 days to vote once it goes live. And be sure to share us on whatever social platform you're currently using. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Blue Sky. And you can reach out to us on all those platforms, and also at Not On TV Podcasts at gmail.com, where you can send us some listener questions or GOAT submissions of your own. So without anything else, we will be moving on into the main part of our show. So our first show for this week will be continuing Adventure Time with Joshua and Margaret Investigations, Is That You, and The Cooler. So let's start with Joshua and Margaret Investigations, which feels like the episode and the writers going, fine, we'll tell you about Jake.
also, I didn't think I'd leave this episode with more questions, but I do.
Yeah.
Like, I have so many more questions now. Like, what happened to his brother?
Right. Well, so
what happened to his parents after he was born? Because clearly... Also, what was that thing that put him in his dad's head and then he came out of his dad's head? I just have too many questions.
Well, I can address this. So, like, for his parents, I think the understanding of the show is that Jake and Finn's parents died when they were little.
Yeah.
Like, sometime between them moving to, like, a new house and the way I like to understand this is that, like, Joshua and Margaret, like, set Finn and Jake up at the treehouse.
Okay.
Like, that's the way I've always liked to think about it. Because otherwise it's just 2 young children wandered away from their house and found a treehouse.
Yeah.
So it makes me feel better to think that their parents, like, found this treehouse and were like, hey, this is a good place for you all to be.
Yeah, but it's still sad and depressing.
Yeah, for Jermaine, for Jake's brother Jermaine, we actually meet him this season. So
okay,
he's actually there.
So he's still around. I was slightly worried that the parents saying something like, "He's not gonna eat him." Like, I was just like, "Oh, is Jake gonna go crazy and, like, kill his brother?"
No.
Like, I was slightly worried about that.
There was
for a hot second.
There was another episode that we didn't watch back in, like, the first or second season, and I think it's the only episode, the only other episode that Jermaine has appeared in, that does, like, it references him and shows Jake and him have, like, a dream together. But yeah, he's fine. we will be meeting him later on in the season.
Okay.
Which is just like the vocal performance of that. It's a nice thing that we can get to. But like the Jermaine part of this, like, is like a good subversion, because I think most people forgot about Jermaine, like because the show never mentions Jermaine. Like almost never. So like I think most people forgot that he exists. So like this entire episode with like that tension around Margaret and like fighting the monster, and like you have that wondering, because what we think is that Jake is in Margaret's stomach, right? That Margaret is pregnant with Jake.
Yep.
So there is this tension the entire episode of what is going to happen. Like, what happened from Margaret being pregnant with a dog to Jake, a shape-shifting, stretchy person. You know?
So, honestly, even after Jake arrived, I thought she had delivered him, and then I saw her belly like do the weird thing again. I was like, oh no, she hasn't had her baby yet. Okay, never mind. Like I was like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah. So it's that nice subversion throughout that entire episode. And not giving a lot of thought to like what's actually happening with Joshua, right? So like I really like, even on like multiple rewatches, I still really like that. Which kind of only works because, again, no one remembers Jermaine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's still being kind of essential that what the blue monster thing is, we don't know. Like, there's still a lot unanswered and still waiting to be discovered about, like, specific origins for Jake, you know?
Yes.
Because all the episode will tell us is that's a blue monster. Like, that's a weird monster that bit Joshua, right? And gave
it literally almost swallowed Joshua. I don't know what you mean by bit.
Yeah.
Like he was close to swallowing him.
That's true. That's true. But we still don't know like anything more on like what that thing is or how it relates to Jake having shape-shifting powers or like what that means or any of that.
Yeah, it's just a lot of questions. A lot. Because I'm like, okay, obviously Jake can shapeshift because it's part that monster.
Right.
But I'm like, what? I sometimes I'm very much, okay, you didn't give me an answer and I'm fine with that. Like, whatever, I'll wait around. But like, this is one of those episodes where I'm just like, excuse me, I have questions and I want those answers.
Right. Yeah. All I can tell you is that will be answered, but not anytime soon.
Okay. Cool.
So you can kind of put a pin in that for now.
Alrighty.
It is wild to think about how quickly the gestation period was for Jake. Because Jake was created in what? Like 6 hours?
Yep, pretty much.
Like, a very, very short amount of time for a new life form to be made and then popped out. Apparently fully formed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Fully formed and able to speak.
Weird.
Yeah. Jake's birth is also a weird thing because I don't know how old Jake is.
Mm-hmm.
And the show never has a consistent answer on that either.
just don't look too closely at it.
Right. Like, the show gives me numerous answers on, like, how old Jake actually is, particularly in relation to Finn. Sometimes he's as old as Finn is. Sometimes he's a little older. And sometimes the show will be like, I'm 30 years old. I don't know. Is that in dog years? I don't know. But you're right. Don't worry about it.
Just, it's happening over there. You don't see it happening over there.
Yep. Well, one thing I did think about earlier in relation to this episode is because we see Joshua and Margaret like be adventurers, for lack of a better word, like just basically doing what Jake and Finn do now. Except more in like a investigations side of it, well, closer to investigations. But we do see a lot of episodes in the past of like Joshua like exploring dungeons and doing a lot of stuff that Finn does, you know, like fighting monsters and fighting demons. But it does make me wonder, did PB know Joshua and Margaret?
Oh.
And is that maybe part of the reason why like she took on Finn and Jake?
Maybe.
Because like it's not hard to imagine that Joshua and Margaret's investigations and adventuring would have brought them into like the gravity of Princess Bubblegum. She's a big figure in that area, and maybe like that led her to like bring on Finn and Jake. It's like, oh, I knew your parents.
Maybe.
It's interesting to think about.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Like, I don't think about those connections sometimes. You just baffled my brain.
I mean, it's a very obvious fan service Easter egg. But I did like the mention of like the ticker tape of like, oh, there's a there's a vampire girl missing sheep, and there's a fire goblin. It's like, okay. Well, please don't go kill Marceline or Flame Princess.
Yeah, please don't.
Please don't hurt them. They're just babies. Marceline, 1,000-year-old baby.
Listen. But it was also really. I was like, the minute he was like, oh look, there's nothing seems to be nothing ever seems to happen, but there's some missing pies. This sounds safe, and I'm like, sounds like the worst one to go to.
No.
Because that means it's something terrible. Don't you know that's how the universe works?
Don't you know who steals pies from old ladies? Monsters. That's who.
Monsters. Oh, it's like, no, that is a terrible idea. I saw it a mile away. I was like, that is the worst idea.
Worst idea.
I truly thought that, like, and you talk about this, like, the tension. I truly thought, like, the monster was gonna, like, kill her as she has the baby, or, like, the baby would decide it needs to come right as she's trying to fight a monster, and I'm like, that'd be hilarious. Be like, I'm fighting you. Oh, wait, I have to deliver my baby. Which is sort of what happened, but not really.
Sort of, yeah. So let's move on to the next one. Is that you? Which kind of continues the thing from last week of, hey, what if there just weren't any consequences? With the return of Prismo.
Yeah, like I was like, I like that we keep getting to see this guy, even though he's supposedly dead.
Right, yeah. But also, the solution is real messed up.
Yep.
Really messed up. Because now a version of Jake is going to sleep forever. Or hopefully forever. And a version of Finn is a sword.
Yep.
So it's like, wow, this is just a lot of really messed up things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just... It definitely is one of those Adventure Time things where you're like, I don't know how to feel about this. It's really... Yeesh.
Like, on the one hand, I was like, okay, this is cool. We get to see some more Prismo. But on the other hand, I was like, this is really fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, this is extremely fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, thanks, Adventure Time. You were supposed to be just a fun little romp. Like, what is going on
What
here?
is
This is
happening?
not fair. This is not fair.
Yeah. But I do love Jake finding the bed that Prismo is trapped in with. And it's just like the most perfect bed that's ever existed in any multiverse. Just like
Yeah.
thousand thread counts and I love Jake's reaction now of like, this is a trap set by a madman. Well done. Your trap has worked. It's very good. Very, very good. Yeah, and I like the timey-wimey dream stuff that Finn gets caught in.
Yep.
Weird. Very weird.
It took me a minute because I was like, oh, okay, so they ate the pickle and like nothing happened because, like he woke up and then all of a sudden he's like, wait, Jake, where are you? And then he sees Jake out in the yard and then Jake disappears. I'm like, oh, nope, he's dreaming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun, like, working through, like, Jake's greatest hits throughout the show. Like, a lot of those, like, Everything Burrito or Dancing with a Dancing Bug or...
Making pancakes.
Yeah, all those things, which, like, I did watch it. I was like, is Matt's gonna know that all those things actually happened on the show? I was like, it'll be fun. That's fun.
I remembered the bacon pancakes and the burrito. But I feel like there was something else that they showed that I was like, oh yeah, I vaguely know about that or I remember that.
Right.
Yeah. I started to figure out that, okay, these are things that he's done. So I was just like, if I didn't recognize them, like, it's probably an episode we didn't watch.
Yes. But yeah, like, this season feels really intent on there being, like, no consequences, really. Like, things that happened can be unhappened, like, undone, and it's a weird tone that the season is setting. Between, like, Finn getting his arm back and Prismo just coming back. Apparently he can just, like, plan B his way back to being alive for all of eternity, I guess. Also, that's a plan B that he must have made, like, really recently. Like, within, like, the last few months of his life. Because, like, the whole thing of that is, like, his, like, strong bond with Jake.
Yep.
It's like, wow, you really set that into motion. Set those pieces up. Yeah, it's such a weird episode. I did really like the Finn's line of, you tell you about it. Like, excellent line delivery. I love that.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the last episode here, which is the cooler. Which brings us back to Princess Bubblegum antagonist check-in. Just like, you know what? On the one hand, I get it. I get it, PB.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if one of, like, I can imagine one of our, like, not allies, but not enemies. Like,
yeah.
You know, someone like, an imperfect analogy, but like, let's say Germany. And someone's like, hey, you know Germany has nukes? We'd be like, well, we should probably do something about that.
Right.
We should probably do something about that, because, I mean, they don't have a great track record at that. Yeah. So, like, I get it, PB. You figure out that the Fire Kingdom has weapons of mass destruction, basically, and you're like, okay, well, I gotta do something about that. But also, if the shoe was reversed, like, if the shoe was on the other foot, and someone like the slime princess came up to you and was like, hey, I don't love that you have, like, these giant monster machines. Like, right. I don't love that you have these big gumball guardians that can attack us and, like, have lasers that come out of their eyes. Would you consider dismantling them? Like, Princess Bubblegum would tell them to shove it. Like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, on the one hand, totally get it, PB. I'd be worried about that too. But also, it is, like, sheer hypocrisy. For other, you expect others to behave in ways that you also would not behave in. But, like, Flame Princess doesn't want to start like an arms race, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But the episode is less about that and more about, like, it isn't anything having to do with, like, the way that Flame Princess behaves or reacts, and it's more about the way that Princess Bubblegum oversteps.
Yes.
Right.
And I find one of the moments that, like, really stuck with me was Flame Princess literally says to PB, like, says, like, basically she's like, you're cold because you're a bad person. And it's like, you're not entirely right, but you're not entirely wrong either.
Right, like, that's the thing that the show has been dancing around for, like, 4 seasons, right?
Yep.
Of, like, PB, you keep doing these things, and on a certain level, it's understandable, but also, a rightly good person probably wouldn't go to these, right?
Right.
But, like, it is like the first time that a character is like, PB, you're just bad. Like, there's not any nuance to this. Yeah. There's not any, you're doing this because I have to, or because you're the steadfast ruler, or some, or even, like, some girl boss shit. It's just, you're not a good person.
You're not a good person. Right. And I think that's why that really stuck with me, was because it was like, oh, I don't think anybody has said this to her before. And so she's very much thrown off her game because she's not expecting to have someone say that to her.
Right. Well, I think this is the only person on the show with, like, an authority who has no inclination to view PB charitably, right? Because you have Finn and Jake, who Finn is steadfast, like, in PB's corner. Jake is, like, has moments of more suspicion to PB, but is still ultimately in her corner. And, like, then you have someone like Marceline, who has clear adoration for her, But her criticism, like Marceline's criticism of PB has always been, you don't go far enough. Right?
Right.
Like in their musical episode, it's like, well, you let this guy live, so it's biting you in the ass now. Right? And so, like, Flame Princess is the only one who, like, has a clear vision of the things that PB does, of, like, having her father lock her up in a thing, you know, in a prison, in a candle prison, and you know, these slew of other things that, like, she has seen PB do, and has no, like, desire to give PB the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
Which is how PB has, like, really thrived, because she does difficult things. She does things that even, you know, you could argue that even she does not really want to do, but her people love her.
Yep.
And her kingdom thrives. But Flame Princess is the one who's like, no, seriously, fuck you. Like, just like the sheer audacity of you to come here and demand anything of me.
Mm-hmm.
So I do love that dichotomy of these two forces who don't necessarily want to be in the power, like the power of the position of power that they are in, but are there anyways. Mm-hmm. And I did find it was interesting, the Flame Princess line of, "You're always just gonna keep stepping on us little people." Right? Because PP kind of feels to me like, again, to like kind of go back to it, like, PB feels analogous to a superpower like the United States versus just a power like Germany. Mm-hmm. Right? Of, I might not be a small kingdom, and I might have like a kind of ferocious power to me in some instances, but against you, there's really nothing.
Right.
You know, because you are this force to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. So I do love, like, this show's continuing battle with, like, where are we coming down on PB?
Yep.
And constantly making us, the audience, reassess where we're at. And even making PB reassess where she's at. With, like, the end of her dismantling her surveillance state.
Yep.
Which always felt like everyone on the show being like, that's weird, but okay, we're just gonna. Yep. That's just who PB is. So yeah, I like that, especially as this season chugs along. But I feel like we're gonna have more to say on this in the future.
I feel like we always come back to this at some point, you know, so we'll talk about it again.
Yeah. we're definitely have, yeah. So for next week, so next week we are going to be talking about episode 23, The Pajama War, episode 24, Evergreen, and episode 25, Astral Plane.
Okay.
So, fun times. So let's move on to our next show. So we're not going to be talking about Dimension 20 Fantasy High freshman year this week. We'll be getting back to that next week. But I did check in with the new season of Fantasy High junior year. And I'm going to try to talk about this as obliquely as I possibly can, which in this case is not really that difficult. So, for this third season of Fantasy High, they opened on a big battle episode. And operated as if this was the conclusion of a season that we did not see.
Yeah.
So they're fighting against the Night Yorb, which is was set up at the end of Fantasy High sophomore year, and it's really kind of a funny episode because Brennan introduces a bunch of NPCs, and then everyone plays it really straight and pretends like we have all already seen these characters.
Okay.
So it's just Brendan bringing up these characters. So it'll be like Squeam, and everyone will be like, "Oh, Squeam, I love Squeam," and then bring out a Squeam character mini. It's like, "Oh, he looks so good. This is always how I imagined Squeam." And so like it's an episode of that, and of them just being really ridiculous, and a lot of this is like them the characters like on their game, like kind of at the peak of their power after like an entire summer of fighting. You'll be pleased to know that they are still just as stupid as they've always been. Fabian opens with a move that gets him trampled by a van. So stupid.
Oh, Fabian.
It's just so stupid. I love them so much. Yeah, but it's a very entertaining episode. I'm kind of waiting for them to get like into actual, Fantasy High, because this is like this episode sets it up as like they have 3 days left before their summer break is over, and they have to go back to Eggfort. So I'm waiting for like that to kick in and see like a bunch of our side characters who aren't in this episode, like the parents and girlfriends and boyfriends,
right?
And all that. Very other
all that kind of
characters.
Yeah.
Really get into like proper Fantasy High. But this is so much fun, and there's a lot of like really fun battle mechanics in this. And they really just went all out with their character minis this time. So it's just so much fun. I'm so happy to be back in this, and seeing new like Fantasy High. Because like Sam Reich, who's the CEO of Dropout, was talking on Twitter, I think, about how Fantasy High was the first thing that like Dropout did that really resonated with people when they did it like 5 years ago. And like how special it is to like be going back to that now. It really does feel like coming home. Like,
that's awesome.
So I'm really excited to get into Fantasy High junior year and just see what this has to offer. There is one line, because Brendan sometimes just drops these lines that cuts at your very being. And it was something to the effect of, you realize now that you are so tired, and this is just what the rest of your life is going to be, you fighting and being tired forever. And you're just like, Brennan, that's too much. that's not okay. That's not okay for you to say that. But I look forward to getting into the rest of the season. So let's move on to Echo on Disney Plus, which is a Marvel Visions show. That's such, like, this is stupid. But so what did you think of Echo?
I actually really enjoyed it. But I'm like really in a headspace right now where I'm like really enjoying, one, indigenous stories, and two, stories that really focus on characters that have disability, and allow them to be more than their disability. And so like I think that really added for me to the story itself. I felt a bit of it was rushed / not fully realized as we went along, because we only got 5 episodes, and like it just felt like there were too many pieces that they were trying to put into place in 5 episodes. I felt like the 5th episode, which is like the big showdown between Maya and Wilson Fisk and his people, like was a bit contrived. Like I was like, that just seems like a major escalation from the previous episode that like is unnecessary.
Right.
So I feel like I wish they would have given it a few more episodes than just 5, but it was well done for what it was. I got annoyed with my television. This has nothing to do with the show itself, but like my TV, and maybe it was my Disney app, but it kept turning off the captions midway through signing. And so like I'd have to pause, rewind, turn the captions on, and then, or turn them off and then turn it back on, like under settings, and then have the captions come back up, because otherwise I had no idea what was going on.
Right.
So I'm glad they had the captions that work whenever my TV decided to let them work. But I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I wish we could have spent a little more time understanding Maya's mother and her and that relationship with her grandmother, and all these these spirits and people, whatever, that she keeps seeing. Like they kind of rush over it because there's only 5 episodes. And it kind of frustrated me, because I'm like, she's getting all this power from her ancestors, but we're not really given time to really sit with the impact of that before like we move on to the next thing. So like I think the problem with this show is it just needed more time.
Right.
It needed like at least 7 or 8 episodes, in my opinion.
Yeah. So my problem with this isn't necessarily Echo, but more that Marvel doesn't know how to make television.
Yep.
And they either need to learn or stop doing it.
Yeah.
Because having 5 episodes of a TV show is not okay. Dropping them all at once is not okay. So like the thing that always was that Kevin Feige had such a derision for television that like this is a man that hated Jeff Loeb with all his heart, and just like gave the television side to him. And like that was always just like Kevin Feige's thing. He doesn't like television. He never has. And now to pretend that he does because it feeds into the MCU for the last 2 years, it's just wildly disingenuous. So it's like either learn how to do TV or don't. Learn how to do it episodic. learn how to structure, or just stop.
Yeah.
So I watched, I think I was halfway through episode 3, which isn't an indictment on Echo. It's just where I got to. and part of my problem with the show is that the first episode is just like, hey, you remember Hawkeye? And it's like, yeah, I remember Hawkeye. I watched Hawkeye. I liked it. You don't need to tell me what happened in Hawkeye. I swear to God, I remember.
Listen, I didn't hate getting to see Hawkeye, but yeah, like it served no major purpose. Like,
yeah, like
except to waste valuable time.
Yeah, like you could tell us this in a different way. I don't need like a recap, like, or just do a recap, like, like
yeah.
That's why they exist at the beginning of the episode, just to recap. You don't need to laboriously go through this. Like, I can understand the relationship between Fisk and Maya. It makes sense. I get it. I don't need to go through it all again.
Right.
And then, like, from like the first, first episode into like the second and third episode, like the pacing is just so slow. It is just like there's nothing happening. I don't get a sense of Maya's character, or like really what's motivating her, or a lot of the family stuff. It's just like, oh hey, here's everything that's happening, and it's nothing.
Yeah. I think the pacing was off, and I felt like, again, it needed more episodes to really be able to flesh things out.
Right.
But also, it's like you said, like, we get to that last episode, and there's this big showdown between her and Kingpin, and you're just like, why? I'm confused as to why this is happening. Because, like you said, like, there's not really any urgency throughout the whole series. The whole 5 episodes, there's no major urgency. Like, yes, she's upset her mother died, and then her father died, and she's upset and angry at the world about that. And then she finds out that Fisk is the one that had her father killed, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Fisk is the problem. And I'm like, this still has no major oomph to it. So I'm like, okay, whatever.
Right. Well, and it's like Devery Jacobs is billed as second lead in the show, and I don't see her till the 3rd episode. Like, what kind of pacing is that? Like,
yep.
Devery,
and we barely get to see her. Like, that's the problem. Like, she's supposed to be like a bigger impact on the show. She's barely there.
Yeah.
And that's so sad. It's like, okay, you have this major talent and you are wasting her. Which, again, give it more time, connect her story to her cousin a little better, and maybe we'd get to see her, and maybe we would care about these characters a bit more.
Yeah.
And so, like, then we get to the point of she finally has a confrontation with her grandmother after, 4 or 5, 3 or 4 episodes. I think it was the 4th episode that she finally has a confrontation with her grandmother, because she has questions. She has to ask her grandmother questions about these visions that she keeps getting. And it's like, okay, but why is her grandmother, like, why doesn't she and her grandmother have a relationship? Like, it's not firmly established. Like, okay, yes, the father took her away when her mother died. Okay, but that doesn't tell me anything about why Maya didn't try to reconnect with that part of the family. It didn't tell me any of that. And I'm like, it's frustrating. And it's like, you could have done so much better. Like, I like it, but I wouldn't say I'm going to watch this more than once.
Right. Yeah. It feels really poorly set up.
They just needed to figure their shit out, and they never did.
Yeah. Well, part of the problem, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, it feels like they just wanted to make a movie. But they couldn't justify having an entire movie about Echo. So they made like this, half-assed, stretched into like 5 episode series. And it's like, it's not necessary. But on the positive, I do love the representation that Echo inhabits. I love more inclusion of indigenous culture. They.
I love that she is not only deaf, but also is an amputee.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. Like, I fucking love that. Like, I'm like, all right, this girl's got a lot of shit going on in her life, and she's still kind of amazing. And I liked it better than I liked Secret Invasion, which is not saying a whole lot, but it is saying enough.
Yeah. And I love that they basically cast half of the Reservation Dogs cast.
I know. I saw her dad, and I was like, I love him.
Yep.
And then I was very upset that he died.
Oh yeah.
Early on, I was like, well, fuck that. But I mean, to be fair, Reservation Dogs used a lot, and this is really kind of speaks more strongly to the lack of indigenous voices within the Hollywood, within Hollywood, because half of the actors on this show, you're like, oh, I've seen them on that other show that's completely about indigenous voices as well, and you're just like, okay, that sounds cool, but it also sounds very sad,
right,
and disappointing when it comes to the diversity we allow within media.
Right. Well, it's like when I was watching Monarch, and Kate and Keiko, the actresses who play Kate and Keiko, are also on Pachinko on Apple TV, and it's like, oh wow, these are like, we're really just like bridging between our two shows, all right. These are just like the Japanese women that we could get.
Yep. It's just, we think that we've made a lot of strides, and then you like really look at the representation that we have available, and it's like, we could still be doing so much better.
Yeah. Let's move on to Criminal Record, which I sadly didn't get to this week, but wanted to because, I mean, I love Kush Jumbo and Peter Capaldi.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt, you did watch this, so tell me a little bit about Criminal Record.
I kind of like. I said this to you off recording, that I found myself saying at the end of the 2-episode premiere that I was like, okay, I'm interested. I want to know more. I want to continue watching. I'm intrigued. I kind of like this, but I'm not exactly sure why I like this. Like, I haven't registered in my brain yet, like, what it is that I really love. Like, I mean, I do love a good detective show. Like, I watch a lot of them. And this is it seems very similar to that. Peter Capaldi's character is this older, more wizened, kind of seen better days in his rear view mirror detective. And I forget the actress's name that stars opposite him, but she is a younger detective. She's a younger, on the police force. I'm not sure if she's a detective, but she is younger. She's fresher. She's got all these ideals that have not been, beaten out of her by the realities of the job yet. Like, she still believes in justice and all that, lovely stuff. And she's heard this phone call, and she believes that this person is the same person that made a phone call for a different murder that happened. And so that's kind of what jumpstarts all this. She's like trying to get people to believe her that things are different, and she ends up butting heads with Peter Capaldi's character, because he's the one that investigated the other murder that she's saying needs to be looked at again. And so, like, it's kind of like a pride ego thing. And so, like, you can already see, like, within these 2 episodes that there's tension between them. And towards the end of the second episode, like, he allows her to have an interview with this guy. I'm gonna have to rewatch the episodes to like really like grasp who he was. But he was like a suspect, or he was someone involved with the previous. I don't know. He's a person of interest, basically. And he allows this young woman to have a conversation with him. And then after she has the conversation with him, he gets this voice analysis expert to tell her and show her that the two phone calls are not connected. They're not the same person. And so like she kind of like starts to lose her fire and drive to like figure this stuff out. And then all of a sudden she realizes that he played her. And it's like, so you get the idea that for the rest of this season, like they're going to be at odds with each other, and she's going to try and prove him wrong, and he's going to try and stop her from uncovering anything, because this case is his past. It's his reputation on the line. And like, I don't know, I kind of like that kind of dynamic, but we'll see.
All right. Well, we'll also talk more about this next week when I get a chance to watch this.
Yeah, and I'll get a chance to rewatch and like really like grasp who these characters are.
But let's move on to Percy Jackson and the Olympians, season 1, episode 5. A God Buys Us Cheeseburgers.
Aries.
Yeah, which I do really think is the strongest episode that they've done so far.
Yep.
And it's really quite stellar.
Yeah.
So I really like Aries and the actor they chose for this, who I think I was most familiar with him from Haven, where he played basically the cleaner for Haven on that show.
Yep.
But is most widely known as a wrestler, but I'm not adept to that personally.
Yeah.
But I really think he embodies Aries really nicely.
Yeah, and the other the scene with him and why am I like Grover, thank you. I was about to say Gordon, and I was like, Gordon's not the right name. It's a G name, but like Gordon's not correct. Him and Grover, that back and forth that they have in the like restaurant while Percy and Annabeth are off like trying to get his shield back, like that is like a battle of wits, and I love it. Like I kept waiting for the scene to go back to them, because I'm like, I want to see what Grover's up to now. I want to see what Aries is up to now. Like I wanted to hear their conversation, because Grover knows how to play people. He knows how to manipulate situations, but so does Aries. And so like they were like feeding off each other, and I loved it.
Yeah, no, that is a great scene. I also really enjoyed the inclusion of Hephaestus, played by Timothy Monson.
Yes, and again, it goes into what we've been talking about with the representation, and it was so great to get to see his, disability as part of that character.
Yeah. Monson, who he had a stroke a few years back.
Yep.
I remember he wasn't part of the first Psych movie because of that.
Yep, he did. He had a stroke.
Yeah. So it's really nice to see him in this. And yeah, kind of a little more downplayed and from a distance, probably to not shine too bright of a light on where he's at now. Personally speaking, but yeah, I think he just did really good at the really good as Hephaestus, and kind of embodying like what for a mortal would be like kind of a sad loner older man,
Yeah.
So like I think he just did a really good job at portraying that.
And the fact that like Annabeth was able to convince this guy who is very adamant about torturing the shit out of people, because that's basically what his chair does.
Yeah.
Like, it tortures people and, forces them to be stuck in in a state of what is the word I'm looking for? A state of like
Suspended animation.
suspended. Thank you. I was like, why? I could not come up with that word, but the fact that she is able to somehow convince him to undo it, even though he's like, I can't undo it. And I'm like, bitch, yes you can. We all know you can. Like, you, anything that's been made has a kill switch. Like, everything has a kill switch.
Yeah.
And she manages to get him to to basically push that kill switch. And it's like, that kind of shows Annabeth's like formidability against these men and these conniving gods, that like she's only a part god. So like, it just everything about this episode was great, from the visuals to the effects to the dialogue and the writing. It just
Yeah.
so well done.
And in particular, I think Leah Jeffries is especially great in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just in her, like you kind of touched on it, but like her interaction with Hephaestus.
Yeah.
No, it's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're doing such a good job adapting this.
They are. And I honestly, I also really enjoy that, like, this episode was not about Percy. Like, it was nice that it was like, yes, this is Percy's story, so to speak, but it was not about Percy. He was not even really in the story at all. Like, he was just a bystander.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I liked that.
Yeah. So overall, just what a great episode.
Yeah.
But we need to be moving on. So let's jump to Bob's Burgers. Season 14, episode 11, Mission Impossi-bob. Yeah, this episode just, like, Bob's Burgers is always a lot of fun, but like this in particular. Like, it's always funny when like the show takes Bob out of his element, and out of like his comfort zone, and it's like, hey, please do something besides flipping a burger. And his befuddlement is always amusing.
Right.
Him trying to like figure out where Teddy went, and like where this like underground bunker is that Teddy is. Like, it's very good.
Oh, that's the other thing that happened in this episode. Sorry, I told you I don't remember anything besides the very giant burger that they were trying to flip. But like, I was like, I don't remember what Bob was doing.
Yeah.
That's what he was doing. Okay, sorry.
Yep.
Now it's coming back to me.
But also, like, Bob is right. That giant burger is a nightmare. You should never ever try to sell that or make that, or like,
there's no quality control on a burger that big.
No, you're never gonna finish that burger. You can't cook that burger. You can't flip that burger. Like, I still don't know how they put that burger in buns. Like,
I don't.
I'm pretty sure they're open to a lawsuit from those athletes.
Like, I know there are people out there that make huge pizza slices, but that's a little different.
That's
like,
much.
But a giant burger, you might be able to like check the outside rim of the burger as you're cooking it, but like that center bit of the burger is probably gonna be raw as hell no matter what you do.
Yeah. Like, that's the difference between, like, you ever see like competitions for like the like extra long, like, super long subs. They'll
Mm-hmm.
like go from like one end of a building to another, and you're like,
Right.
that's okay because cold cuts don't go bad like that.
Right.
The same logic does not apply for a burger. And I love that the kids had this plan for the bun, and they're like, no, of course that wouldn't work. Because you're children, and you think everything works that you have an idea for. I do.
But also the fact that someone decided, saw it on the menu and said, you know what, that's what I want to order today.
Right. But I do love the dynamics at play where it isn't Linda wanting to do something ridiculous, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it isn't like feeding into like her id. It's just her being like the kids having to convince her to do something, which is a much better dynamic at play.
Yeah.
Like, that's always better when the kids are ones being stupid. Because they shouldn't be stupid. They're like...
They're children.
They're, 10 years old. Of course that wouldn't work.
Of course it wouldn't work. But they're so adamant that it will.
Right.
That's the funny part, is that they're like, oh no, this is the answer. And you're just like, no, that is not the answer.
Like, it feels like when I was a kid and me and my sister would just, like, be coasting off of each other's waves when we're talking to each other. It's like, of course that would work. This is genius. What could possibly go wrong? You're talking to your parents and you're like, this is a great idea. There's no possible way for this to go wrong.
Yeah. You're like, I have thought of everything that could possibly happen, and I know we will pull it off without any problems. And then your parents are like, what about X thing? And you're like, oh, I didn't think of that.
Of course, jumping from the couch to the coffee table is going to work. What could possibly happen?
Lately, the 6-year-old in my house has been obsessed with trying to reach the ceiling fans and make and turn the fan arms, whatever, around without like turning on the fan itself, like just pushing it with her hand, and like trying to hit the chains that hang down from the ceiling fans. Granted, there are no furniture close enough to these fans that she could just jump up from the furniture and just like, do this. She has to like launch herself and try to do it as she's going through the air. And I'm like, please don't do this. And she's like, but I just want to try it. No, you will die. I will die? Yes, you will die. Because if I try to say you'll hurt yourself, she'll be like, I won't get hurt because I won't. I just know I won't. So you can't even say she'll get hurt. You have to be like, drastic measure, worst possible scenario. Mm-hmm. One, she was like trying to like toss something at the fan to try and get it to move. And I'm like, there is glass surrounding those light bulbs. And those light bulbs are dangerous. If you break them, the glass will shatter and hit your eyes. And she goes, my eyes? I am traumatizing a 6-year-old. It's fine. But like, exactly, it like plays into this whole narrative that children think that nothing will go wrong. That their ideas will always be perfectly sound.
It reminds me of when I was a kid. Me and my cousins would be at my grandmother's house.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the word for this is. Like, my grandmother had not a stroller, but like one of those cars you put kids in and they can like drive themselves around. And it was like,
okay,
it was like, yellow, and it had like a red top.
Or was it red with a yellow top?
Like that. It was something like that. I think it was yellow with a red top. But anyways, you could like put them in this and like kind of drive around, for lack of a better term. Like, there were pedals, I think, and it kind of
Yep.
propelled you along. So my grandmother had like this real steep hill, like real steep driveway. Like her house, like it went down and around, and you could like drive down to like the garage. And so like it went down, and like there was this bank of grass. So my cousins would put me in this thing, load me up with sand toys as armor, and then fire me off like a projectile down the hill, and I would hit like the bank of the grass and just like like somersault over. These are the kind of ideas children have.
Exactly. It's always going to work.
Always going to work. We did this several times. It never once worked without me coming away with a bruise.
The fact that we survived.
It is truly remarkable.
Indeed.
So let's move on to For All Mankind, Season 4, Episode 10. Perestroika.
Did you actually watch this episode?
I'm still behind. I'm hoping to catch up this week.
There was a lot of fighting in this episode. Like, a lot of, like, fist fighting. Like, it was ridiculous how much fist fighting was going on. And I was like, you guys are supposed to be adults who do adult professional things. Why are you acting like children? And it comes down to the fact that NASA on Earth wants one thing, and the people that actually work on Mars and can see the impact of their NASA's choice say, no, we want to do something totally different. So like there's these two factions basically of people on Mars that are like warring against each other, and it's just like that causes a fist fight at some point in the episode. And what's her face ends up getting shot, the African American woman who's really close with the older man that has the grandchild on Earth, and he just keeps staying on Mars because he doesn't want to leave. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. I'm just terrible with names. Is her name Tony? Is that right? Is there a Tony?
I really legitimately do not know.
I don't know. Like, I'm feeling terrible. Anyways, whatever. Someone gets shot. She's like a beloved character, and she's someone that like everyone on the Mars mission like really respects and likes her. So like when she gets shot, the fighting stops, and everyone's just like, oh, so that happened. Meanwhile, down on Earth, Margot and the Indian woman who is friendly with Dev is on Mars now because he's helping the Mars situation try to like, you know, outsmart the NASA people basically. Because what's happening is there's this asteroid that's in space that NASA wants to change the trajectory of so that it goes towards Earth so that they can change what things are happening on Mars. I think I'm still a little convoluted about the science of it, but whatever. And the Mars people want it to just remain in orbit around Mars. So they try to thwart NASA's plan, because if they thwart NASA's plan, that nothing happens with the asteroid and it just stays within the orbit of Mars, and it fucks up whatever their big idea was. And it's a lot of politics. And again, I feel like if I'd been watching this show from the start, I might understand some of the politics stuff a little better, because I feel like it's something that's been kind of carrying over the years on this show. I don't know. Whatever. Margot takes the fall for faulty code that prevents NASA's override from happening and being successful. So she loses her immunity from the Russian government, and so like the FBI like arrests her or whatever. It's just a lot of messy fighting and stuff. And yeah, like is her character named Riley? Sam Riley? Is it Sam Riley? I think it's Sam Riley. Riley ends up being the person that goes out into space on the outside of the ship to like turn off an autopilot kind of thing. I don't know, whatever. And then someone that's, in cahoots with NASA, he gets instructed to go out and stop her. And so they're physically fighting in the, nothingness of space. And she doesn't have her cord because she used her like cord to keep the device from like going back into its position that it was in when she got there. Like, I'm surprised both of them are still alive. I don't even know if they're still alive, to be honest, but it seemed like they were both still alive. And I'm like, I don't know how the science of this is working. But yes, there was a lot of fighting. Some guy shot himself in the head. He was somebody that Margot was talking to. So he might have been a foreign diplomat of some kind. I don't really know. But yeah, like, people died. And Miles gets tortured with CO2 because they're trying to figure out who's part of the Mars like anti-NASA group. And it's the older guy that I was talking about that like keeps wanting to stay on Mars even though he has family back home. Dev, and like a smattering of like just random people that work on the Mars stuff. But yeah. That's basically what happened. Don't ask me to give a full, like, true evaluation of the show because it's one of those shows I think I really do need to like sit down, no distractions, watch from the beginning. I know I would really like it. There's so much being thrown at you, and I feel like I'd comprehend it better if I knew who these characters were going into the season. But since I didn't, I'm like trying to figure out their names and also pay attention to the storylines. So like politics. That's what it winds down to. Politics.
Right. Anyways, more than that another time. Probably. Let's move on to our last show of the week. Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, Season 1, Episode 10, Beyond Logic. And I liked the season finale quite a lot. It definitely does feel like it's setting up a lot of things. Which is weird because it's like the show's set in 2015, so it's well before a lot of events of like future movies. So like the Godzilla sequel happened after this, and the Godzilla vs. Kong happened after this. And it does feel like it's setting up Godzilla vs. Kong. If not what happened in the first one, perhaps in the second one, just based off where it leaves all the characters, physically speaking.
Okay.
Because the show ends, the season ends with all of the characters on Skull Island, which is where King Kong is. So I think that's interesting. I didn't realize before this episode that Bill Randa, who was the other man in the flashback timeline in the 50s, was John Goodman's character.
Okay.
So I did not realize that going in. Might make Kong Skull Island a little better in retrospect because I actually know who that character is now. But there were mentions that like he had like an empty coffin. So I had held out hope that like he might come back in some way. But no, we saw that man die.
Yeah.
Because the show with like the last few episodes has kind of been big on, has been kind of bringing to the forefront that like no one actually dies on this show.
Okay.
A bunch of people like either survived or were caught in like quantum states or whatnot. But yeah, there's some like nice reunions in this. Again, it feels like it's setting up for like future things, and I don't exactly know what that looks like. The characters are now working for the company that like built the Mecha Godzilla and Godzilla versus Kong.
Okay.
So it's like that's all weird. There's a lot of like goofy Godzilla MonsterVerse stuff happening here. Then I'm like, oh right, that's that thing. Right, okay, I got it. But there's a good Godzilla versus a monster fight that, hey, shockingly, was not draped entirely in darkness. So,
okay.
if nothing else, I like that. And I did like that about Monarch in general. Of like, there were multiple shots of Godzilla or other monsters that were like in broad daylight. Which feels like a really
try to do visual trickery.
Yeah, feels like a really rare thing now. Like there was, I think I mentioned this last week, but like there was an episode where they found Godzilla in the Sahara Desert in the middle of the day, and it's like that just doesn't feel like a thing that happens with special effects. You know, like that just doesn't feel.
I mean, we were just talking about it with Percy because they did the darkness around the What was that? The
Minotaur.
Minotaur. Thank you. My God, my brain is not coming up with words today. So like it isn't very common for us to get to see a full visual effect like that. So I'm glad to hear that that is something that you get to experience watching that show that I will never finish watching.
Yeah. I think part of this is that they've had that visual effect on hand for so many years now. Between like numerous like even just with like the legendary MonsterVerse of like multiple appearances of Godzilla. Like three Godzilla adjacent movies now. So like I feel like they got that pretty they can just like pull that out whenever they want in any circumstance.
Yeah.
But it's really good. Yeah, I enjoy this a lot. I think the end of this episode actually ended in like 2017. So I'd be interested to know, like, I think that was like when the Godzilla sequel actually came out. Like the Godzilla King of Monsters or whatever the fuck that was called. But anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah. If nothing else, I would like to see a second season of the show. Which isn't something that I was sure I would feel all the way through the season. So, good job, show. So that is it for this week. Next week we're going to be talking about True Detective, among other things. But until next week, Mads, tell us where to find you online.
You can find me at DorothyNYC89 on Instagram and Twitter. I'm mostly on Twitter. So that's your best bet. I'm also on TikTok, DorothyNYC89. So those are your places.
Nice. I try to be on Blue Sky as much as I can these days, but I'm cross-promoting on both Twitter and Blue Sky. Twitter at Drew Koenig and Blue Sky at Drew Koenig. I'm not on Substack right now, even though there was some deplatforming of Nazis. So I am currently looking for like what to do newsletter or like website wise. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually have no idea. I have no idea if I even want to do a newsletter because they confuse me. But yeah, that's all for myself. You can follow the podcast on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Not Another TV Podcast. And you can email us at notanothertvpodcast@gmail.com with any thoughts, comments, questions, goat submissions, show recommendations that you have. You can find previous episodes of the podcast on Apple and YouTube, along with any other podcasting device that you have. This podcast is up on Libsyn, so you can find more of that very detailed there. And also, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever service you're currently using. Until next week.
And
what was that?
Before that, if you are also upset about Our Flag Means Death being canceled, you can find information on how to join in the fan campaign on various posts throughout my Twitter account. So,
nice.
You can go there.
Yes, do that. But also, always keep in mind, don't go in the ocean, none of your business. Goodbye.
Goodbye.